Hey, I'm Rebecca Walker. And if you've ever felt like the odd one out, the one who can't seem to fit into the picture perfect family, then you're already familiar with the struggle. You see, I've always been the black sheep of the Walker family, the one who never quite made it, the one who was always just a step behind. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday, the kind of day I used to dream about as a child. The sun had just begun to set, casting a soft amber glow over the Manhattan skyline, but the warm hues couldn't penetrate the chill that had settled in my bones. I stood by the kitchen counter, staring at the mug in my hands, the remnants of coffee still swirling in the dark liquid. The gentle hum of the city outside felt distant, like a world I no longer belonged to. For years, I had been the outsider in my own family, the black sheep. That term had followed me like a shadow, whispering in my ears during every family gathering, every birthday, every holiday. No matter how much I tried to prove myself, it was never enough. My siblings, David, the golden boy, always on the fast track to success, and the rest of them, had their lives mapped out with impressive careers, investments, and family expectations. They were the epitome of the American dream. I, on the other hand, was stuck in a mid-level marketing job, stuck with dreams that never seemed to materialize, and stuck in the relentless cycle of trying to earn their approval only to be cast aside like an afterthought. Today was no different. I could already hear their voices echoing in my head as I replayed the family dinner from last night. It had been a mockery of what could have been a joyful reunion. My father, Richard Walker, sat at the head of the table, as always, with his cold eyes and distant demeanor. My mother, Margaret, smiled stiffly, always the dutiful wife, never once questioning Richard's judgments. And David, of course, with his perfect life, his well-timed career moves, and his unwavering support for everything my father said. "Rebecca, when are you going to get your life together? You know, you could do so much better if you just took things seriously for once," my mother had said, her words coated with that ever-present disapproval. I had forced a smile, knowing it was pointless to argue. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm doing well." But deep down, I wasn't fine. I wasn't doing well. I was doing everything I could just to keep afloat while my family sailed on their yachts, congratulating themselves for their success. But that was about to change. As I leaned back against the counter, the glint of my phone screen caught my eye. A text from Charles, my father's old lawyer, flashed on the screen. The message was short, cryptic even. "Meet me tomorrow. I have something you need to see." My heart skipped a beat. Charles was always professional, never one to mix business with personal emotions. This was something serious. What could it be? Was it related to my father's deteriorating health? Or was it about the family business, something no one had bothered to explain to me? My mind raced, the familiar feeling of being left out washing over me again. But this time, I was determined to change that. I wasn't going to sit by and let my family take everything from me. The next day, I made my way to the lawyer's office. The building was grand, with its polished marble floors and high ceilings that screamed power and wealth, things my family had in abundance, and things that I had always been denied. Charles greeted me with a tight smile and a handshake. "Rebecca, thank you for coming," he said, his voice low. He gestured for me to sit. "I've looked over the papers you asked about. It's complicated." Complicated was an understatement. As Charles pulled out a set of documents from a thick leather binder, my eyes fell on one in particular, a contract that could change everything. The document was an agreement to sell a significant portion of the Walker family's business empire, an empire I knew nothing about. But what caught my attention was the name at the bottom of the page, my father's signature. It was the same one that had been on countless family contracts for years. Only, it wasn't my father's handwriting. The signature was forged. My breath caught in my throat. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "My father, he wouldn't." Charles leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "Rebecca, I know this is hard to understand, but the sale of the business is happening whether you're involved or not. The deal has been in motion for months. Your father signed off on it a long time ago, but it wasn't him who signed the final documents. My mind whirled. It couldn't be true. My father was always in control. He would never have let anyone else make decisions without his consent. But as I looked at the document again, something inside me clicked. My father had been ill, but Margaret, my ever-loyal wife, had control of the family's financial affairs. She could have easily signed the papers in his place. "Your mother," I said, the words thick in my mouth. Charles nodded gravely. "It was her decision, Rebecca. She forged your father's signature and finalized the deal. And worse, it looks like it was done with the intention of keeping you out of the inheritance altogether. You're not even mentioned in the will." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had always known there was something off. But this was worse than I had ever imagined. I stood up, the weight of the truth crashing down on me. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice trembling, but filled with a quiet rage I hadn't known I possessed. Charles looked at me, his expression softening. "It's not going to be easy, but you have one thing they don't. You know the family. You know the details. You have the leverage, Rebecca. If you want to take control, this is your chance." My mind raced with possibilities. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about the business. This was about everything my family had stolen from me. It was about respect, about reclaiming the power that had always been denied to me. As I walked out of Charles's office, a new sense of determination burned within me. For years, I had been the family's punching bag, the one they laughed at, the one they dismissed. But that was all going to change. I was done being the black sheep, and I was going to make them all pay. The soft clink of the elevator doors closing behind her was the only sound that filled the otherwise quiet office. Rebecca took a deep breath, still trying to process the conversation she'd had with Charles. The weight of what she had learned, the betrayal, the lies, the signature, felt like a physical presence, suffocating her. As she entered the lawyer's office, Charles was already sitting behind his polished desk, his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. He motioned for Rebecca to sit down, his expression serious but understanding. "Rebecca, I know this is a lot to take in," he said, his voice low and steady. "But you need to understand, your father's health has been declining for a while. He's not in the position to oversee the business anymore. And your mother, well, she's been pulling the strings behind the scenes." Rebecca clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she sat down. She had suspected something was wrong for years. The way her father distanced himself, the coldness in her mother's eyes. It all made sense now, but to hear it laid out in front of her, to realize the depth of her mother's manipulation, was more than she could bear. "I still can't believe it," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with the anger she was barely holding back. "How could she do this? How could she take everything away from me and pretend I don't exist?" Charles exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. "I know. It's not easy to hear, especially from someone who was supposed to be your mother, someone who you trusted your whole life. But we have to face facts. This is bigger than just family issues. This involves millions of dollars, and your future is at stake." Rebecca's mind raced as she thought about what Charles had told her. The forged signature, the sale of the family business, the betrayal. It felt like everything she had ever known had been a lie. Her father, who she had once idolized, wasn't in control anymore. And her mother had built a web of deceit to keep Rebecca from getting anything. She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice rising. "How do I even begin to fight back against my own family? They've had control over everything my whole life. Why would they ever let me in now?" Charles looked at her with an expression that almost seemed like pity, but there was something else in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. "You have to use what they don't know you have. You have the truth, and you have the evidence now. That's more than they can say." Rebecca took a moment to steady herself. The anger was still there, but now something else was starting to bubble to the surface. A sense of determination. She had never felt this way before, but in this moment, she knew exactly what she had to do. "I'm not going to let them get away with this," she said, her voice firmer now, more resolute. "I don't care how deep their pockets are or how many lawyers they have. I'm taking control of what's mine." Charles nodded, clearly impressed by her shift in tone. "That's the spirit, but you need to be careful. Your mother and David will fight back with everything they have. This isn't going to be easy, Rebecca." She knew he was right, but there was something in her now, a fire she hadn't known existed. Her entire life, she had been the one overlooked, dismissed, the one who couldn't measure up to the expectations of her family. But now the tables were turning, and she was going to make them see just how wrong they had been about her. As Rebecca left Charles's office, the city outside seemed different somehow. The streets that had always felt like a maze now seemed like a path she could navigate. She had a purpose, a mission, and this time nothing was going to stand in her way. Later that evening, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table, the same one she had sat at for years, the one she had always thought was just a small, insignificant part of her life. But tonight, it felt different. It felt like a battle station. She opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keys. She had already begun compiling the documents Charles had given her. The evidence was there, the signatures, the deals, the communications between her mother and the board members of the family business. But what really caught her eye was a small, seemingly insignificant detail buried deep in the paperwork. A clause in the business contract that, when looked at closely, made it clear that the entire deal had been orchestrated with the intention of cutting her out completely. Rebecca's fingers froze over the keyboard. This was it. This was the smoking gun. The clause was simple. Unless approved by all immediate family members, the estate would be divided equally among the children, excluding any children not currently involved in the family business. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated move to eliminate her from the family's legacy. Her mother and David had planned this for years. Her pulse quickened as she thought about what this meant. She wasn't just fighting for money. She was fighting for her place in the family, for her dignity, for her right to exist without being constantly overlooked, for the life she had been denied. "Now I'm going to make them regret ever underestimating me," she muttered under her breath. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from David. "We need to talk. You're making a mistake if you think you can go against Mom and Dad. You're going to ruin everything." Rebecca stared at the screen, the words hanging there like a threat. For the first time, it didn't scare her. Instead, it fueled her. She wasn't backing down. Not now. "Game on," she whispered, before hitting send on her reply. "I'm not going anywhere." Rebecca stood still in the bustling cafe, watching as David walked in, his confident stride always a reminder of the ease with which he navigated the world. The tension between them was palpable before a word was even exchanged. She had already rehearsed what she would say, but seeing him now, his perfect posture, his calm demeanor, it made her question everything. No, this time she wouldn't back down. David gave a curt smile, settling into the chair across from her. "You wanted to meet, so here we are. What's this all about, Rebecca?" "I think you know exactly why we're here," she replied, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. David folded his arms, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not playing games, Rebecca. This isn't the time for family drama. You're making a big mistake." "Family drama?" She leaned forward, letting the words sink in. "You and Mom have been playing games my whole life, David. I'm done being the afterthought." His calm expression faltered for a second, just enough to make Rebecca feel a shift. He wasn't the untouchable figure she once thought him to be. He was vulnerable, just like everyone else in this twisted game. "You're making this worse than it needs to be," David said, his voice now lower, almost pleading. "You have no idea what you're up against. Mom is controlling everything." Rebecca's heart pounded in her chest, but she stayed composed. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm up against, and I'm taking control now." He looked at her, his jaw tightening. "You don't understand. You think you can just waltz in and take everything? You're playing with fire. No, David, she said, the anger finally breaking through. I'm not playing with fire. You and Mom have already burned everything to the ground, and I'm the one who's going to rebuild it. David stood abruptly, pushing his chair back, frustration evident in his eyes. You'll regret this, he spat, before turning to leave. Rebecca didn't move, watching him go. A calmness settled over her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. No more hiding in the shadows, no more being overlooked. She was ready to take what was hers. The next few days blurred by in a haze of paperwork, legal jargon, and sleepless nights. Rebecca had never felt more alive, yet every step she took to uncover the truth felt like stepping further into a lion's den. With every new document she uncovered, every lie she peeled back, the walls around her grew tighter. The Walker family empire wasn't just built on wealth, it was built on control. And for the first time, Rebecca was in control. She knew what she was about to do would shake the foundation of everything. But it was the only way. The meeting with Charles had been a turning point. With his help, Rebecca had gained access to the private files, the ones her mother had kept locked away in her vaults. They were more than just business contracts. These were her mother's secrets. Rebecca sat in her living room, surrounded by files and contracts, the low hum of the city outside barely cutting through the thick silence of her thoughts. She knew what this meant. She had evidence now, everything she needed to expose her mother's manipulation. The family business, the fortune they had built, all hinged on one thing: a forged signature, a series of hidden transactions, and the silent complicity of those who were supposed to care for her. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her reverie. It was a message from David. We need to talk. You're not thinking this through. Stop now before it gets worse. Rebecca read the message twice. He had no idea. She wasn't the naive, overlooked daughter anymore. She wasn't the one who always took a back seat while he and their mother played God. This time, the game was different, and she was ready for it. Later that evening, Rebecca met David in a quiet cafe. This time, it was different. The usual air of calm superiority that David always carried seemed out of place now. He was more agitated than she had ever seen him. You don't know what you're doing, David said as he sat down across from her, his voice tense. Mom's not someone you cross. This is bigger than you think. Rebecca stared at him, her eyes hardening. I know exactly what I'm doing. The difference is I'm done playing by your rules. He scoffed, leaning back, crossing his arms over his chest. You really think you can just take control of the family business like it's yours to take? You're in over your head, Rebecca. Her voice was steady, but her words came with a sharp edge. You've never understood me, David. I'm not trying to take the business from you. I'm taking what's rightfully mine. David's expression faltered for a moment. Rebecca saw it, the brief flash of doubt in his eyes. The golden boy had never been challenged like this. Not by her. Rebecca, he said, his tone shifting to something softer, almost pleading. This isn't the way to fix things. If you go public with this, you'll destroy everything we've built. You won't just ruin our family, you'll ruin yourself. Her pulse quickened. His words tried to sink in, but she wasn't listening anymore. She had spent too many years watching from the sidelines, trying to appease them, trying to play the part they expected. Now she was taking the wheel. No, she said, her voice quiet but full of conviction. I'm not destroying anything. You are. You and Mom have already done that. You've ruined me, my place in this family, and I'm not going to let you walk away from it. David shifted in his seat, the unease in his posture clear now. You think this will make you a hero? You'll be left alone in the end. Rebecca stood up, her chair scraping across the floor. I don't need to be a hero. I just need what's mine. And this family? It's not worth saving if it's built on lies. David's face hardened, the mask of control slipping back into place. He didn't respond, but his silence was enough. This battle wasn't over, and Rebecca knew it was only just beginning. As Rebecca walked back to her apartment that night, her heart pounded with the certainty that she was on the right path. The weight of her decision pressed against her chest, but it was a weight she could bear. The pieces were in place. She knew what she had to do next. In her apartment, she opened the next set of documents Charles had helped her uncover. There, in black and white, was the confirmation. Her mother had not only forged her father's signature, but had manipulated the family's finances in such a way that she controlled every major decision. The deal for the family business wasn't just a corporate transaction, it was a carefully orchestrated power grab. Rebecca sat back, letting the reality of it all sink in. Her mother had always been the one pulling the strings, but now it was time to cut the strings. It was time to fight back. Rebecca sat in her apartment, the documents in front of her scattered like pieces of a shattered puzzle, each one a small piece of the truth she'd been fighting for. Her heart was pounding, her fingers trembling as she traced the details on the page. The more she read, the more the pieces clicked together. But it wasn't enough, not yet. Her mother's manipulations went deeper than she ever imagined. The deeper Rebecca dug, the more she found. A web of lies that stretched further than just the business. This wasn't just a power play. It was personal. The phone rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was from Charles. "We need to meet," his message read. The urgency was evident, and Rebecca's gut twisted. This wasn't a conversation she'd been prepared for, but she knew she had to face it. When she arrived at Charles's office later that day, the air felt thick with anticipation. Charles wasn't one for unnecessary dramatics. He was a man who dealt with facts, with evidence. The look on his face told her everything she needed to know. This was bigger than they had anticipated. "Sit down, Rebecca," he said as soon as she entered. His voice was serious, tinged with an edge of something darker she hadn't expected. Rebecca sat, her hands tightly clasped together, trying to control the rising panic in her chest. "What's going on?" Charles didn't waste time. He pushed a set of papers toward her. "I've gone through the documents. Your mother didn't just manipulate the business. She orchestrated your exclusion from the will years ago. But that's not the worst part." Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. "What do you mean? It's not just the business? What else has she done?" Charles leaned in, his eyes locking with hers. "Rebecca, the signatures weren't the only things forged. She manipulated your father's health records, too. Falsified medical documents to make it seem like he was of sound mind when he agreed to certain decisions. But in reality, he was too ill to understand the full scope of what he was signing." The words hit Rebecca like a punch to the gut. She had always suspected her father's decline was being kept from her. But this was beyond anything she had imagined. Her mother hadn't just excluded her from the family's empire. She had used her father's vulnerability to steal everything. Rebecca stood up, her mind spinning. "How could she? How could she do this to him? To me?" Charles' voice softened, but there was no hiding the gravity of what was at stake. "This is more than just a family squabble. This is criminal, Rebecca. What she's done is fraud, but to make it stick, we need proof, real proof, and I'm afraid we have only scratched the surface." That evening, Rebecca sat by the window in her apartment, the city lights below flickering like distant stars. The anger inside her hadn't subsided, but now there was something else too. An unsettling sense of betrayal so deep it was hard to comprehend. She wasn't just fighting for money, for control of the business. She was fighting for her father's legacy, for everything he had worked for. Her mother had stolen that, and with it, the last vestiges of her trust. Her phone buzzed again. A message from David. "You're making a huge mistake, Rebecca. Stop this before it gets worse. Mom is the only one who truly understands what's best for this family." She stared at the message for a long time, feeling the weight of his words. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal, and it always had been. He had always been his mother's right-hand man, the one who stood by her decisions, the one who never questioned the way things were done. And he had always expected Rebecca to fall in line with the family's vision, just like she always had. But now, That wasn't an option. Not anymore. Rebecca's fingers hovered over her phone. She wanted to respond, but this time, she wouldn't let herself be dragged back into their world of manipulation. She wasn't going to give in, not this time. She wasn't their puppet anymore. She typed her reply. "I'm done being your pawn, David. I'm taking what's mine." She hit send, feeling a rush of relief wash over her as she set the phone down. There was no turning back now. The next day, Rebecca met Charles again, her heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the final step before the real confrontation. As she entered his office, he stood and gestured toward a stack of documents on the table. "I've spoken with the investigator," Charles said, his voice low. "We've got the proof we need. Your mother's forgery is airtight." Rebecca glanced at the papers. It was all there, every forged document, every hidden clause, every falsified record. But she wasn't thinking about the documents anymore. She wasn't thinking about the fight she was about to wage. She was thinking about what it meant to finally have the upper hand. "Now we go public," Charles said, a hint of finality in his voice. Rebecca nodded, a surge of determination filling her chest. She had the power now. The plan was set. She was going to expose her mother's lies, and with it, reclaim everything that had been taken from her. Rebecca stood in front of the mirrored wall of her apartment, her reflection staring back at her, a stranger she was only just starting to understand. She had spent her whole life trying to please others, trying to live up to expectations. Her parents, her siblings. But now, everything had changed. The woman in the mirror wasn't the same one who had walked into this battle weeks ago. She was someone who had lost everything, but in the process, had also found herself. The truth about her mother's manipulations was in her hands, ready to be exposed. The forged signatures, the falsified medical records, everything she needed to bring Margaret Walker down was ready. And today, it was going to happen. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Charles. "Ready for tomorrow? The press conference is set. The media is going to make a lot of noise about this, but we need to make sure everything is airtight." Rebecca read the message several times. This was it. The final step. Exposing Margaret's crimes to the world. But there was a knot in her stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something else. A part of her still hesitated. Was she ready for what came next? For the fallout? She glanced at the clock. It was almost time. She needed to confront her mother first, before everything spiraled out of control. No more games, no more lies. The meeting with Margaret was set in the family estate, a place that had always felt like a fortress. It was where Rebecca had spent countless hours, trying to be the daughter her mother wanted, trying to gain her approval, only to be pushed aside time and time again. Margaret was waiting for her in the sitting room, as if nothing had changed, as if the truth wasn't about to come crashing down around them. She sat elegantly in a high-backed chair, her posture perfect, her gaze cool and detached. "Rebecca," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I was wondering when you would finally come to your senses." Rebecca crossed the room, the weight of what she was about to do pressing heavily on her chest. "I'm not here to make amends, Mother. I'm here to end this." Margaret's smile faltered for a brief moment, but she recovered quickly. "End it? My dear, what do you think you're doing? You're just throwing everything away. For what? A petty grudge?" Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "It's not a grudge. It's about what's mine. About everything you've stolen from me. The signature, the lies, the years of pretending you cared." Margaret's face turned cold. "You always were too emotional. You never understood the bigger picture. I did what was necessary for this family. And you, Rebecca, you're nothing but a distraction." The words stung, but Rebecca didn't let them show. Instead, she pulled out the stack of documents she had been holding onto for so long. "This is the bigger picture, Mother," she said, her voice low but steady. "Everything you've done is here. The forged signatures, the doctored medical records, the will, all of it." Margaret's eyes darted to the papers, then back to Rebecca, the mask of control slipping for just a moment. You think you can just destroy everything I've built? You think you're the one who gets to decide what happens to this family? I'm not here to destroy it, Mother. I'm here to take back what's mine. Rebecca placed the papers on the table between them. And I'm going to make sure the world knows what you've done. Margaret's lips tightened, but she didn't move. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, both women locked in a battle of wills. I won't let you do this, Margaret finally said, her voice a quiet, dangerous threat. You think the world will stand behind you? You'll be the one left with nothing. You think the media will side with you over the Walker name? Rebecca's breath caught in her chest, but she didn't flinch. The truth doesn't need anyone's approval, Mother. It stands on its own. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Two women who had spent their lives playing a dangerous game, one who had always been the puppet master, and one who had finally cut the strings. Margaret stood up abruptly, her face now flushed with rage. You've made a grave mistake, Rebecca. I will destroy you if it's the last thing I do. Rebecca didn't move. She was done being afraid. I don't think you have that power anymore, Mother. The press conference was a blur of flashing cameras, sharp questions, and the weight of the truth finally being released. As Rebecca walked into the conference room, her heart was pounding in her chest. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment everything would change. She stepped up to the podium, her eyes scanning the sea of reporters. Behind her, on a screen, the documents were projected for the world to see. Proof of her mother's deceit. The truth was out there now, and there was no going back. The first question came quickly, aimed at the scandal that was already making headlines. Ms. Walker, how do you respond to claims that your family's reputation is at risk? Rebecca's voice was calm but unwavering. I respond by saying that the Walker family's reputation has been built on lies for far too long. Today, the truth comes out. My mother forged my father's signature to sell our family's business, and she manipulated everything, including my inheritance, to keep me out. The room fell silent. The shock in the reporter's eyes was evident, but Rebecca didn't waver. She was done hiding, done playing the role they had forced on her. Another reporter spoke up. How will this affect your future, Ms. Walker? What are you planning to do next? Rebecca smiled, a flicker of triumph crossing her face. I'm going to rebuild. I'm going to take what's mine, and I'm going to make sure that the Walker name means something again. But this time, it will mean something because of the truth. Rebecca stood in the ruins of the empire her family had built, yet the weight that had once held her down had finally lifted. The press conference had done its job. Margaret's manipulations were exposed. The family's secrets were laid bare. Rebecca had taken control, but the battle wasn't over yet. The final piece of the puzzle was now in place. Her rightful inheritance, the family business, and the legacy that had once been denied to her. She sat at the desk in her new office, the same one that had once belonged to her father, her fingers drumming lightly on the polished wood. It felt strange. This was her space now, and the idea of actually owning it, of holding the power in her hands, was still sinking in. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Charles. Rebecca, the paperwork's all set. Everything's finalized. You're officially in control of the business now. Her heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment she had fought for. She took a deep breath, the weight of the years of struggle rushing through her all at once. She had finally broken free. But as the moment of triumph settled in, Rebecca realized it wasn't just about the business. It was about her. About reclaiming the life she had once dreamed of, but thought she'd never have. She was no longer the black sheep. She wasn't the disappointment. She was the one who stood tall now, holding the power to reshape everything. That evening, Rebecca walked out of the office building, the city skyline stretching out before her. The lights of Manhattan glittered, reflecting a new reality for her. A reality where she was no longer fighting to fit into someone else's world. She had created her own. A quiet smile tugged at her lips as she looked around. The city had always felt like a battleground, but now it felt like home. As she walked down the street, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from David. His words were simple, but loaded with regret. "You were right. I should have listened." Rebecca paused, her hand resting against the cool stone of the building beside her. She thought for a moment, then typed a reply. "It's never too late to change, David. But this is my time now." She hit send, feeling a strange sense of peace. Her journey had led her here, to this moment of freedom. The past was behind her, and the future was hers to shape. With every step, Rebecca walked into the life she had earned, no longer weighed down by the chains of her past, but fueled by the strength she had discovered within herself. As I reflect on this journey, I want to leave you with a message that has become my guiding light. Never let anyone define your worth but yourself. We all face moments where we feel overlooked, where the world seems to be against us, and the people closest to us seem to pull us down. But in the end, it's not the betrayal that defines us, it's how we rise from it. I've learned that the real power lies in knowing who you are, standing firm in your truth, and fighting for your place in this world. It's about taking control of your own story, regardless of the obstacles that try to hold you back. If I can do it, so can you. What's your story? Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. And if you found inspiration in this journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future stories like this one. Your story matters, and I'm so glad we could share this one together. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.